Awesome. Today I'm talking with Valerie McTavish, if I pronounce it right. Hi, Valerie. And Tim Wohlberg about spontaneity. And if I remember correctly, Tim, you told me that on the first date that you've had, you flipped a coin and you ended up camping for 3 days. So that's an awesome start of a relationship. I was wondering how long ago that was, but I guess we'll get to that in a moment. I think embracing spontaneity, you two started a journey to help other people to be more spontaneous. You launched a website with the same name, bemorespontaneous.com. You developed an app. I've heard that it's no longer in the air, but still has put some work in there at DICE. There's a podcast about spontaneity. And I think most importantly, you've really walked the talk on spontaneity in your life, both in the personal life, but also I think in your careers and in your work life. So thanks so much, both of you, for taking the time spontaneously to talk with me about this topic, because as I told Tim, I just recently on Tuesday decided to go to climb the Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. And it's been a crazy ride actually ever since. And I've been experiencing the ups and downs of spontaneity. So I'd love to ask you some questions about this.
We're ready, happy to be here.
Awesome, yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, could you define spontaneity and tell me why it's important for a good and a happy life?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah,
I know.
That's like all of it.
I'll let you go for it.
So first of all, we're huge fans and supporters of spontaneity. We think it's a very powerful tool for people to have. I know a lot of people think of spontaneity as something that is just sort of this flighty, frivolous thing. It's a characteristic that people have. Mm-hmm. But the way we look at it is that it's actually something that we can use to increase our creativity, to improve connections, to decrease stress, and even to inspire us in the things that we're doing. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of philosophers that have talked about spontaneity, and there are a lot of different definitions of spontaneity. But mm-hmm. to keep it super simple, please, spontaneity is acting without any premeditation. Uh-huh. So this comes into play when you are just sort of following your gut, intuition. That can be spontaneity, mm-hmm. but also on a sort of a bigger scale, letting go of expectations and releasing yourself to the moment, releasing yourself to whatever presents itself to you at the moment.
Yeah. I think a lot of people go into so many different things, whether it's a relationship, a job, even a dinner out, and they have expectations. And if they don't live up to this,
yes,
I guess it was okay. It was fine. You know what? When you remove that expectation and you either don't know where you're going, you've taken down those barriers, you are open, your eyes are open, you see things different, you're accepting more, and it's a completely different experience.
Yes. Yeah, I fully agree. I absolutely agree. And I know what you're saying, because expectations, they're the recipe for anything to fail and to be disaster and to be disappointing and to be shit. Also in relationships, to have all these expectations, it's a killer for any spontaneity and for any joy and happiness. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very recognizable.
We always say disappointment is always preceded by expectation.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you don't have any expectations, you can't be disappointed.
And so this is probably what happened to us on our first date, as you brought up. And I'll tell you that story. Yes. In Vancouver, British Columbia. And this was 20 years ago. You had to ask. So it was 21 years ago now, in the year 2000. It was our first date, and we decided, one of us, we were actually talking about it over breakfast this morning, thinking like, was it your idea or was it my idea, or who came up with the idea? Yeah. But we were going to go camping, and that was the trip. We were both outdoorsy and we wanted to go camping. So, okay, that's the plan. Where are we going to go? Well, that's a different story. Let's whip out a map. In the olden days, you open them up and you see, okay, well, we can go north, east, south, or west. Well, I got a coin, let's flip it. And it started with that. And so it was north or south. We were in Vancouver. We ended up going south, and that was heads or tails. Yeah. And then we ended up at a major intersection just north of Seattle. So we went about 3/4 of the way down, and then we flipped the coin again, east or west. All right, we're heading inland, and we went towards the Cascade Mountains. If anyone knows what Cascade Mountains are in Washington State. And it was an amazing trip, but we had zero expectations. We were both sort of in awe of the landscape, and we were just connecting on a different level because we were both into it with our full hearts and our full minds, and everything was genuine about it because we were experiencing it exactly at the same time.
And to help you appreciate what freedom that was for us, you have to understand where we were coming from. So we were both working in the media, Tim in radio, and I was working in television. And, you know, in those positions, everything is scheduled to the second.
Yes.
Literally,
right?
literally.
Everything is to the second, and you have to be ready to change and move at a moment's notice, because there are certain things that have to happen, like commercials to pay for the shows. Yeah. So, you know, this was we were living in that stressful environment of everything being planned. And then when it came to figuring out what we were going to do for our first date, like neither one of us wanted to dive into that stress of making that decision.
You want the opposite of that.
And we went the total opposite direction, and it was just the perfect recipe.
It was liberating. It was totally liberating.
Yeah. And was that already part of your life? I guess not in your work, because everything was structured, but I guess until that moment, it's probably where you two together discovered this power of spontaneity, right?
Yeah. So it was never quite so front of mind, right? I think we both have spontaneous natures, and I think we had never really sort of intentionally been spontaneous, because a lot of people think that's an oxymoron,
you can't
right?
Plan to be spontaneous. What are you talking about? Well, of course you can. You actually can.
Yeah. So I think that was the beginning of us realizing that there was something really fabulous about leaving things up to chance and intentionally doing it, intentionally creating space for spontaneity.
Yeah. Yeah. So we live in a society, and this is kind of in line with what you said about your work, you know, and this media context where everything has to be planned to the second. We are working, striving, trying, we're chasing accomplishment, you know, and as you've mentioned on your website, actually, I think is very accurate. We're taught to grow up, and we're taught to be responsible, whatever that means, you know. And this suggests us that we should plan things and should strive for something, and actually should strive for control. So spontaneity is the opposite of that. So how can we integrate, and this is already tying into a little bit what you said before, how can we integrate spontaneity into a life where we have to plan? And I have some follow-up questions based on my real-time experience just over the last couple of days, having to deal with this. I mean, I booked the flight and everything, and I'm getting all this gear for
oh man,
it's been crazy and it's been stressful. I realized there's a shit more work to do than I had expected. So how does the spontaneity tie in, or how can we integrate it into a life as an adult, as a grown-up adult, who also has to plan for things and has responsibilities?
Yeah, I think when we are small children, anything went. We were told to go play outside. And we were gone for most of the day, and that was it. And you come back when the supper bell rang, right? So you're right. And then at some point, someone came along. We have to do this. We have to need some structure. We have to be, you know, doing this particular thing, whether it's a job or whatever it turns into be. But you can't go all into spontaneity, and that's sort of the rules. It's you peppering it throughout your life and throughout your day. That's sort of the secret. But you can't just turn the whole thing on and just live like spontaneous, and because there are certain societal rules to follow,
consequences,
and
right?
Consequences.
And so you can do that, but there are going to be consequences. So what we always say is it's important to have spontaneity injected into your life. And we always say it's the practice of spontaneity. You need to keep that muscle flexible, right? You need to keep it strong. You need to continue to use the spontaneity muscle, or you will lose it. And then life becomes too structured. It becomes formulaic. And we start to talk about being stuck in a rut. Yeah. Right. And that's when you need to inject that spontaneity back in. So it's a balance piece, just like anything else, right? And you want to be able to do that on a regular basis. And then when you do something big, like decide on a whim to go and climb Kilimanjaro, you have to realize that that spontaneous action has to continue to not have expectations. Yeah. Right. So you can't expect, I'm going to get to the top in 3 days, or do you know what I mean? You're going there on a spontaneous trip, which means you have to let go of any expectations you have, and you have to just live it, be in the moment. If you get there and realize you don't have enough clothes, well, look around. Where can you get more clothes? Yeah. Right. If you get there and you realize I should have brought hiking poles. Okay, great. what can you use for hiking poles? You got to be spontaneous in little bits all along the way to support the bigger spontaneous decision.
And I think that's the point Valerie's making, is that you don't have to go big. Like, you don't have to climb Mount Kilimanjaro tomorrow. It's okay. You can scale it back and start small. Like this is what she was saying, when it's a bit of a muscle and you start to tweak it and start to open yourself up to the ideas, whether that is for many relationships, it's that date night and that expectation. Well, let's go out to the same restaurant and say, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What movie do you want to see? I don't know. What do you want to watch? You know, it's the same thing.
Forget it. Let's just watch TV.
Line them up, you know, put 6 choices on a dice, assign 1 through 6, put 6 of your top choices. If you can't make a decision, have some fun, see what happens, and roll the dice, and whatever you land on, it could be dinner, it could be that movie, it could be something with the kids, whether that's a hike, a boat ride, or a drive. It could be anything, but start small, but start. That's the key. Start.
I like the idea, or what you say, Valerie, about this muscle, that it's a muscle that we have to train. It's everything. If we don't use it, we lose it. And this is definitely something that we need to cultivate. On your website, bemorespontaneous.com, it's mentioned that you know when, where, and how to use spontaneity as a tool to get ahead in work, life, and love.
Yeah.
Could you share some examples of these 3 elements of life and how spontaneity, I mean, I definitely have imagination about that, but I'd love to hear from you what you're thinking of in that regard.
Sure. So I'll start with work, because I think this is one of the most untapped things we can do to advance our career or to build us up as entrepreneurs, especially as entrepreneurs. And I'll say for Tim and I, starting with Be More Spontaneous in our entrepreneurial journey and then moving on to our coaching businesses was so powerful and beneficial to us, because it taught us how to adapt to things that were changing in the business. It allowed us to tap into creativity when things got hard. And it also reminded us that we can use our intuition as well. And there's a very close tie between spontaneity and intuition. In fact, the philosopher Immanuel Kant, he was the one who said that intuition, or that immediate judgment, that thing that we just know, that's what he called spontaneity. So they're directly tied. And that is really helpful in work and as an entrepreneur. Because when you are keeping that spontaneity muscle toned and fit, and you're doing spontaneous exercises on a regular basis, you have the ability as an entrepreneur to problem solve, to adapt,
because you're not
stay in the moment.
You're not fixed with your expectations in this limited framework.
There's not just one path always, right?
And when things don't necessarily go your way, you know how to look for other paths. You know how to find other ways to get things done, because that's what spontaneity teaches you.
I spoke a little bit about the relationships, but when it comes to love, you know, whether that is possibly a new relationship for someone, I'm recalling a story on one of our blogs that there was a friend of ours who we gave our dice to, and she used it on a first-time date. She was going on a blind date. Someone had set her up with a blind date. So she was really excited, and she was going to try the dice on and see what where they ended up, what they were going to be open to, and how things were going to unfold. And I guess I think the story went where they rolled the dice, and he was a little bit hesitant at the beginning, and then he said, "Okay, well, sure, let's try this." And so they rolled the dice, and they ended up at a rather fancy, very high-priced restaurant. I think this was Vancouver, and so he was a little bit humming and hawing about that, and then something else happened where, well, we could change this, or I'm trying to remember all the details, but inevitably, she found out he wasn't nearly as adventurous or as open to the idea of change, or just sort of being on the fly and going with the flow, or maybe it's just a couple of appies and a drink here, and then we can go somewhere else where I can afford it. So she found out he was cheap. She found out he wasn't very adventurous or very open to the whole idea of being spontaneous. And so I think she said, "Well, thank you for saving me weeks of possibly trying to find this out on my own. I found out he wasn't the right guy for me." And so she moved on. But that can help too.
Great example, actually.
The other thing is with love and relationships is that, you know, the longer you're together, the more you do tend to fall into routines. And, you know, opening things up to, you know, intentionally doing something spontaneous creates newness. It creates something fresh and exciting. Nobody's responsible, right? So there's no blame.
It's nobody's
Yeah,
fault.
that's the best part, right? That was your idea, man. It sucked.
Yeah.
No, and nobody has to make a decision.
Yeah.
So everything is open. Everything is you two together figuring it out.
Yeah.
Finding something fun, finding something exciting, or just, you know, being open and observing and seeing things through a new light.
Yes.
And that really creates conversation. It creates connection. There's so much that can happen in that relationship as a result of just completely changing things up.
Yeah. And it shifts a big weight, because I know from past experience with past relationships that it was always like, yeah, but we're always doing your thing, or always this kind of discussion. And then actually I'm happy to follow, or I'm happy to initiate something. But if you have destiny deciding for you, or a dice deciding, it's actually nobody's fault. If it doesn't turn out well, it's just, you know, that's a really great point.
Nobody's to blame. Yeah, no expectations there, and you just go with it. And you're doing it together, which is the fun part.
Yeah.
I think when a lot of us are tied to our cell phones right now, and there's no free time, the minute we're bored out of for a split second, what do? We reach for that phone, right?
That's terrible,
Instantly,
yes.
just what's going on? What am I missing out on? What's everyone doing? Well, put the thing down. Maybe I'll pick up that book, or just look around your house. What have I hadn't touched for a long time? What else is going on? Step outside. There's so many other things, right? It's so easy to just get locked down to that phone of ours.
Yeah.
So I have a question with regard to this real-time experience that I'm having with this trip to Tanzania. So I'm a person that I do well with habits and things, but I'm also very spontaneous. I do a lot of things actually by dice. I just flip a coin, and then based on whatever comes up, I will do whatever there is to do. So I booked this flight, and actually without really thinking about it, it was like Tuesday night, laid in bed, and then I thought, I'll just do it. And then Wednesday morning, or Wednesday afternoon, I booked the flight, and then I started to realize, okay, I also need to book actually the tour itself, but I need to have a guide and all this stuff. And then I realized, oh, I need actually a ton of gear, and I have nothing. So like all of this stuff. And then I had to do all of this next to my work, because prior to my holiday, I have a ton of stuff to finish. So actually, I was experiencing quite some stress in the end, because I know that once I get through this, it will be all amazing. But at the same time, how does it go with your planning side, you know? So what's the relationship between spontaneity and planning and actually preparation and scheduling things? Because I've kind of felt the tension between the two, you know, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have been so spontaneous. I had those moments.
Shit, man, we're regretting it already.
Yeah, I know that will change, but
it will.
Yeah,
and I think it's trusting the process. I think it's trusting the process, right? It's that taking that first jump, that first leap. We did this. We did the old one side of the dice. One number represents a country, and years ago we rolled the dice and ended up in Vietnam. And we had to do the same thing. You know, you have to make those certain certainties a part of that schedule, whether that's getting there and booking that first place at least, and then seeing where you're going to go afterwards once you've landed. So I think there is a little bit of that give and take. But yes, you're going to have to make some hard decisions, but also be open to what's happening at the same time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, of course, there are consequences to spontaneity for sure.
Yes.
But at the same time, stay in the gratitude of it, right? Like, even though it's going to be hard for you to get there, even though it's going to, you know, be stressful for you as you are gearing up and figuring out how to try to get fit in the next, you know, fit enough to climb a mountain in the next little while.
That's all okay. It's just the busyness with my work now, wrapping up
Right.
things before my holidays, and then on top of it, having all this like time constraint with getting the right gear and getting it all together in time, and you know, that's kind of been the stressful thing.
And this is the mindset shift,
Yeah.
right? So every time you feel stressful, every time or stressed out, every time you feel like there isn't enough time, put your mind to, this is because I get to go climb Kilimanjaro. This is because I'm going to have this amazing adventure.
Yeah.
And this is because I said yes to a crazy idea that popped in my head.
Yeah.
And when
then it's a small sacrifice.
And it's just a slight shift, right?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking I'll never get it all done, or I'm stressed out, or I need more sleep, you're thinking this is all for a good reason. This is all because I get to have this amazing adventure.
And you know, when you get there, there are teams to support you. There are other people with the same inspiration around you that are going to be all part of you. Like, we're all going to do this together. We're all going to have an amazing time. We're all here on the planet at this very special place. Let's enjoy it and let's get through it. Hey, I don't have enough here. Okay, we'll help you out when we need that. Right. You know, so you will be supported. And I think to trust the process as well, because sometimes you will have awful experiences, whether you leave things up to flipping a coin or rolling the dice. And that is part of being spontaneous. The stories that you have, the adventures you have, as long as you're at least safe and you get out of things alive, which we've had some close calls when we were doing these things. But at the same time, you know, starting slow, just sort of accepting those. I'm a kind of guy who I talk to everybody at the street. I'm in a lineup as I'm turning around, I'm talking to everybody, and Val's like, what are you talking about? I like to talk. I just find out what's going on, find out what else the story. There's another conversation ready to be told. And even when we go out for breakfast, or this morning, I did it. I hate looking at menus, can never make a decision. It's great for making decisions when using spontaneity, right? You flip a coin or you roll the dice. But I never look at a menu. I just say, what if you were sitting in my seat? What would you have right now? Oh, you got to go with that. Oh, done, and done. You know, so have some fun with it. Be open to it, and it is a total mindset.
So you let other people take the responsibility in a way.
Yes, and I blame them. It was terrible. See ya, I'm never coming back.
Yeah. So very much related to this. I do very well. I mean, I am a very spontaneous person, I think, and like I said, I do a lot with the coin. But I also do well with habits and with routines and getting up at a regular time, having my exercise routine and all these things. It helps me. And actually what it does is it allows me to do more things with less energy.
Right.
And kind of be on autopilot. Like it's like the fast type of thinking. And so how can we integrate spontaneity with having habits and routines, and how can we make sure they mutually reinforce each other? Any thoughts or any words on that?
You know, this is a balance thing.
Yeah.
You can't be spontaneous all the time and have any kind of control in your life.
Yeah.
Right. So the beautiful thing about spontaneity is that it's something that you can use when you need it, when you need to get out of a rut, when you need to tap into happiness, when you need to trigger some creativity. These are things you can use spontaneity for. But you know, you still want to go to bed at night. You still want to eat a healthy diet. You still want to exercise. Those routines that you have are amazing for creating a solid, healthy life foundation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And spontaneity can be this tool that you use to add on top, right? It's the cherry on top. It's the extra 10%.
You know that when you are working out, like any person who's spending any time in a gym, you can only you'll plateau if you continually do the same thing. You'll just like you're in a rut, just like your body gets into a rut, you're doing the same thing, you'll plateau. So with that boredness of things, you know, we've curated a little list that's on BeMoreSpontaneous.com of some of our favorite tools. And I came across a set of dice for the gym, and you roll it. It's like squats, push-ups, jumping jacks, and you like roll the dice literally. So there are tools out there that allow you to inject spontaneity at certain levels, but which just shake things up, because routine is great. You will benefit from routine. You are productive when it comes to routines. And that's why you've instilled them in for health, for work, for all sorts of other things. But you're going to peak, you're going to plateau, and you're going to get bored. So when you can inject a little bit of spontaneity and some fun, it changes your perspective. And that might now become a new routine.
Right. Yeah. And it just adding a little bit can change everything. I mean, say you meditate every day. Well, what if you rolled the dice and went somewhere else to meditate? It's going to give you new challenges in your meditation, right? It's going to give you a new sense of body feel that's going to be different than if you're just meditating in the same space every single time.
Interesting.
So these little things can shake up your routine without ruining your routine, right? So you can still have healthy habits.
That's a great point of integrating, actually, and probably making it a much more rich experience while still maintaining the benefits of the routine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a question about flipping coins, because as I said, I do that probably for as long as I can remember. And I've made a lot of small and also many really big decisions based on the flip of a coin. And it brought me into the most beautiful and amazing situations, actually. but sometimes, and actually another thing, it also helps me articulate actually what my feeling is, because sometimes I'm not really sure what I think about something, and then I flip a coin, and then actually I feel like, oh, I was hoping that the coin would say this. But actually
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
and then I have the feeling of disappointment, or I feel relief, and so it's also teaching me, or it's articulating for me what it is actually that is inside of me that I want. So I know there's these extreme people who always follow the coin. I don't always follow the coin, and I do it a lot, but sometimes I also don't, because I have a really clear, distinct feeling all of a sudden, no, this is not what I needed. So,
Right.
Love that.
And
Yeah.
this is exactly one of the pieces of spontaneity that people underestimate, which is sometimes you don't need to be spontaneous. Sometimes you need clarity on your decision.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we use spontaneity to keep us from having to make a decision. And sometimes we can use a coin flip to help us truly understand what we want in that decision, to accept what our, intuition is telling us, what our gut is telling us, and what we really truly desire.
Yeah.
Because we fight back when the decision is taken away.
We've done the same. We've rolled the dice or flipped the coin, and we're exactly the same position. Did you want to do that? No. Okay, let's do it again. Let's flip a coin again, or and no one's judging you. You're not going to get caught in trouble or anything. Do whatever the hell you want and have some fun. But if it makes your heart sing, go for it,
Yeah. But that's the thing, I mean, this is what I wanted to pick your brain on or hear your thoughts on, because of course, if you actually go with it, you might end up having a really unique experience, and it might be really good, even though at first your gut feeling might say, I don't really feel like it. So what's your perspective? Should we really go all out, or should we always listen to the coin, or is there some space in between?
Well, I think there is a comfort level, and other people are going to act differently. Now I forgot what I was going to say. Well, you go first, and then I'll see if you're probably going to say the same thing.
The thing is it depends what the stakes are, right? You're not going to flip a coin on, should we buy the house or not buy the house?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a pretty big decision that you probably shouldn't leave up to the coin. The coin might help you, tap into what you're really feeling and figure out if it's fear or if it's real, trepidation. But if you want to practice spontaneity, you have to practice it where the stakes aren't high, and you have to go with what the coin says or the dice say, because when you don't do that, then you can sometimes fear comes in, right? And sometimes that uncertainty or expectation comes in, and it manipulates you into believing that this decision isn't a good decision. And it really doesn't matter which way the coin came up. It's just that you have so much uncertainty and fear, and you're letting that guide you. So you have to practice in small doses where the stakes are low, to force yourself to do things that you maybe don't think you want to do, just to kind of get the experience of going through the motions.
I remember what I was going to say. Julius, was probably when you were thinking about starting 39, the 39 idea, right?
Yeah.
I've got to put myself, exactly, 39 ideas for life. What am I going to do? How am I going to make this happen? Geez, this is sort of nerve wracking. I've got to put myself out there. Anytime someone goes out on stage, those butterflies happen. There's that nervousness that happens, and that uncertainty, and that.
I have it every 9 days. Yeah.
Right. And exactly. You've got to try something new. And if you get uncomfortable, we know this is entrepreneurs, and we know this, anybody who's actually done any mind work, is that this is where change happens, change for good. When you get uncomfortable, things are moving, things are changing, you're changing. So it's that uncomfortableness that really is going to move the needle for you. It's going to make you happier. It's going to get you out of that rut. It's going to affect change. So it can be that trigger for you. If you, again, don't want to take the responsibility on yourself, flip that coin and let the world take care of you. And you're just along for the ride. Yeah,
definitely. I was thinking about what you said, Valerie, that I just recently in April, actually, I flipped a coin, I bought a car, and and I've not regretted it for one moment. It's been amazing, and probably I could imagine even flipping on a house.
Yeah.
We came close.
Yeah, we were thinking about moving, but we weren't finding anything that we liked, and we decided that we had to stop house hunting
Yes.
and just enjoy an afternoon. So we decided to go for a bike ride.
And just to shortly explain, the dice that we had was a directional dice. So we had north, south, east, west, northwest, southwest, and all the corners. And then we had this directional or the numbered die. So we would roll the directional dice and go, we're going west, 4, and then we would assign, say, if it came up as 3, either 3 blocks, 3 minutes of driving or biking, or 3 hours of driving if we were going to take an epic road trip. So that's how, and there's no rules again with that. We would just assign things, and that was happen. So we were going to go on a bike ride.
Yeah. So we ended up going for a bike ride and to a neighborhood we had never considered living in, and saw an open house sign.
But we were on this bike ride that took us to this neighborhood that we weren't in.
We thought, okay, why not? Let's go for it. Let's take a look. Fell in love with the house, owned the house 3 days later.
Yeah, we bought the house. Yeah, and we lived there for 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And then
it was great.
Yeah, it was great. We loved that house. It was one of our favorite places to live.
Yeah, so destiny took you there.
It did.
Totally.
Absolutely.
We were open. We were totally open to it.
But when you flip a coin on something like choosing between 2 different cars, chances are you like both cars equally. So either way, it's going to be good. And why waste a whole bunch of time trying to decide, running a spreadsheet, doing the pros and cons and all that kind of stuff? If it comes up even, why not flip a coin? Get yourself out of that indecision and go for it. The stakes really aren't that high because you're not going to go wrong with either choice.
If it's that close.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Spontaneity, it requires trust in the unknown, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how can we learn to give up control and just go with the flow and go with whatever comes whatever destiny decides?
Well, like I said, you got to start small.
It's practice.
And do it on a regular basis. Practice it, because if you don't, then you'll forget what it feels like. And you'll miss out on those great magical opportunities to be present, be in the moment, and deal with whatever is in front of you instead of what you expect to be in front of you.
Yeah. Do it for a road trip. Whoever's watching this now, you could do it for a road trip this weekend. Sometimes we're limited depending on where you are with the pandemic, but get out there, or if you can get to a restaurant, roll the dice or flip a coin and make a decision, or let the dice decide.
A bike ride, a walk, where to have dinner.
Low stakes, keep it low, but get into it, because your senses will become alive. You don't walk into or go to a place with the same expectations that you would if you planned it. I heard about this Mexican restaurant. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to order this. I know exactly. No, go in there, fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Ears are open, your senses, you're smelling things, you're looking at different things that you wouldn't see otherwise. So it's a completely different experience.
Yeah. Stay in the moment.
Here's this thing. I know that from my own experience, I moved to Switzerland. I started a company there. I moved to Myanmar. I started a company there. And from that, other things unfolded. I lived there for 6 years. So I like to be out of my comfort zone. Actually, that's where growth happens. And that's where, actually, a lot of things that we couldn't imagine at first unfold themselves. And I keep hearing you say, yes, start small, take a small little thing, What about doing these big things where you go all in? Because that's actually what I like.
Do it, baby.
This is the thing, though. You have to let go of the expectations.
Yeah.
And you have to be open to the personal growth that comes, because you're going to learn about yourself.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? If you take a big leap, you're going to learn about your comfort zone. You're going to learn about how you deal with the consequences of your choices. You're going to learn about how you adapt to new things. Yeah. And so that can be super powerful. And absolutely, if you're feeling like you got to do it, do it.
But you're also going to learn about the people around you who you're doing it with, whether they can handle it, whether they are on board, whether you have to take their hand and it's okay. We can do this together. Don't be nervous or scared. Let's just jump.
Yeah.
So whether that's your family, your kids, or just you, and whether you're on your own or with your partner. So I think it's just adds a total level of fun. It basically comes down to fun. You're likely going to have a good story at the end. You're going to smile. You're going to have a new experience. It's the payoff will be there one way or another.
Yes.
And the benefits of flexing that spontaneity muscle are going to come whether you do something huge or whether you consistently do little things.
Yeah. Or the combination of both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a great point about if you're doing it together with other people, that you have to in some way help them or guide them and make them feel comfortable. If you're more comfortable with flexing that spontaneity muscle than maybe your company is. It's a good point.
Yes. Yeah.
So two more questions. What's the downside of spontaneity? Because I'm sure that you guys have experienced that as well.
Yeah. So I don't consider it a downside, because this is part of what spontaneity teaches you.
Yes.
Right. And that is, there are sometimes consequences. Sometimes you end up in a place you don't want to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to get out of a situation that's maybe difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sometimes you have to explain your way through something because you've landed in a place you shouldn't be in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like explaining to a border guard why you've crossed the border 3 times in 2 days.
Canada, US, Canada, US. What's your plan
So-
here? Why are you guys doing this? We're just rolling the dice, of course.
So, you know, it feels like a downside at the time, because you're thinking, how are we going to get out of this? I didn't want this to happen. This is a challenging thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is it teaches you your skills. It teaches you your coping skills. It teaches you how to be creative in the moment, to be aware and present, and to use your intuition to
Yes.
be able to solve that problem. And, you know, this is one of those things that you can be doing this in just on your weekends and for your playtime, but it's going to cross over into your work and how you deal with issues. It's going to cross over into your life as an entrepreneur, because you are in a position now where you know how to tap into problem solving skills.
The other idea around where it possibly could be seen as a negative, Julius, is where others, how they see you. When we first started Be More Spontaneous,
Yes.
people looked at us differently. It was funny how we were treated. Some would see us as flaky. You know, we couldn't make a decision. We were always on the go, and we'd love to travel. We did spend a lot of time on the road. So the other expectation from them was that, oh, we can call Tim and Val over anytime because they're spontaneous. They'll just come over for dinner, or they'll be ready to go out, or
that they could cancel plans with us because they'll understand
they'll be fine.
we're being
They're
spontaneous.
Well, no, you know, it's not like that. So be careful of that and how you interpret spontaneity and how you place it on other people. And it's not that you're just stepping outside of the routine, outside of the norm to have a little fun here and there. And you're not a flake, and you're not going to be, hopefully you're not going to be seen like that from others.
And spontaneity is not an excuse to disregard other people
or rules,
right?
Or societal rules.
It's not an excuse to treat people disrespectfully. You know, you can't just say, oh, I didn't make it to dinner because I was being spontaneous and I went somewhere else. You know,
it's not cool.
I think there never is an excuse for that anyway.
No, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last question, and I really appreciate all that you've shared so far. It's been, it's been a pleasure. What question? Because I like to close with this question actually as the last question in the interview. I always ask the same thing. What question on this topic of spontaneity should I have asked but didn't ask? So was there something that's an important question but I didn't ask it?
What's taking you so long? Let's go here. What are you waiting for? I mean, I think for a lot of people, I don't know if this is the question. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if there's a question, but I would pose the question to you and the viewers and the listeners is to, what are you waiting for? You don't, just shake it up a little bit. Start small if you need to, or go big and have some fun, right?
Here's the thing that I think a lot of people think, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it. You didn't ask this question, but a lot of people think that spontaneity is this sort of like modern idea, that it's this thing that young people are into because they don't want to grow up, because they're fighting against the rigor of adulting. and the truth of it is, spontaneity has a long history. There is ancient philosophy that talks about spontaneity. Taoism talks about spontaneity.
Yes.
And at a very deep level, where they look at spontaneity as a way to really tap into your true self.
Yes, and your intuition.
Exactly. And so I think the biggest misconception about spontaneity is that it is this completely youthful, flighty, a rejection of
Yeah.
responsibility. And that's not it at all. It's a huge tool that can be used for you to have a better understanding of who you are
Yeah.
and to be truer to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of entrepreneurs or other people who want to shake things up, you've heard probably a New Year's resolution, say yes more, say yes to everything, right? Say yes and see what happens. It's kind of that same principle, and it's been around for a long time. So there are different ways to inject spontaneity. And I think it's always you're always going to take something away from it.
Yeah. 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 I think we could all use more of it. I mean, it just adds to life. And Valerie, what you said as the downside, or what you also didn't consider as the downside, I think even the unexpected bad experiences, like you said, they teach us a lot. They give us a lot to reflect on, and they offer us opportunities to grow. So actually, in my view, there is not really a downside to it. Yeah. And even if
all right, so you got to remember that when you get on your plane.
Oh, no, definitely. No, actually, I'm not worried about that at all. It's just finishing my work in a good way so that I can leave my work behind in good order and still be prepared at least enough to make it to the summit, because that's still the goal. Like I want to get there.
Nice.
Yeah. But I'll send you guys a picture from the summit.
Yes.
Because
I'm
going to get there. And thanks so much for the time. And I'm happy that your power is back. And I'll be in touch. I'll follow up sometimes. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Good luck with the venture, man. That's going to be fun.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stay spontaneous.
Absolutely. And I'll send you the links. I'm publishing it on Tuesday. That's my due date. And then I'm starting the next 9 days. So I'll give you a heads up when it's out and what my write-up will be.
I love it. We'll be following.
Yes. Hey, thanks so much. Have a great weekend. You too.
Thanks, Julius.
Bye. Great day.
Bye.
Bye.